Hey guys, Elias here. In today's video, I want to talk about all of the Genshin Impact characters, but not in a traditional sense as in power ranking. I want to talk about how likely I will be to empty my wallet for them, in a sense of how willing would I be to spend my hard-earned money to gain JPEG's affection and love in a Genshin Impact. So let's begin with the first character by the name of Albedo. Albedo, in my opinion, is about A tier since he has quite a lot going on for him. He's quite handsome, he's quite a charming character. He's also quite intelligent, which means that by buying his affection, I would probably gain quite a few favors with a future Steve Jobs or something. So that's quite favorable in my opinion. And I would be willing to spend around $300 on him. If that's what it takes to gain his affection, I'm willing to pay the price. Now, let's move to Aloy. Now, Aloy is about C tier because she's a hunter, which means she's a gatherer as well. So she would provide quite a substantial amount of food as would be required in case of an emergency. And I think that would make her quite reliable, so I'll be willing to chill in a little bit just to make sure that I keep her in favor, and that she would be willing to help me in case I'm stranded in like a middle of deserted island and needs like survival tips, so she would be quite helpful for that. Now Amber. Amber is acquainted with the law, which is a quite significant favor to get for money. So I would be willing to put her at about, I'd say right below Albedo, because she's quite charismatic, which means that she would be able to persuade the law to let me off in case I break it, like try to sell Paimon on a black market or something, and I'll get caught by authorities. So I think that's quite important. So I would leave her at A tier. Now Ayaka. Ayaka is somewhat of an ability, so which means no matter how much money I send her way, she will never acknowledge me as an equal. She will most likely see me as her servant at best, so I'll push her at F tier for that reason, because that would be just a waste of money in my opinion. Now Barbara. Barbara is a priest, which means that she would be willing to lift off curses in case I get hexed by like a wandering-sized Sumeru for too long. So just because it would be life or death situation to have her favor in certain case, since she's a healer, I'll probably put her at A tier because she's one of the only healers that might be able to save my life in case of an emergency. So I'll push her at about self-soul tier. Now Beidou. Beidou is a pirate, which means that she would be able to provide a muscle in case there's an emergency, and which means I can buy like a protection. And in my opinion, protection is quite important in Genshin universe, because if you don't have protection, you most likely will just get backstabbed by like a Futu agent or something. Plus, she has a massive ship, which would provide a stable transportation method, and that's quite important to travel to like to Inazuma and stuff. So I'll push her above Amber, I'd say, because she's kind of her own authority in a way. So that's important to me. Now Bennett. Bennett has a curse on him, which means that he would provide only bad luck. So no matter how much money I would spend on him, he wouldn't be of any use because he would just bring bad luck all around him. He's like an unlucky charm. So I would put him in an F tier. Now Chongyun. Chongyun is an exorcist, which means that he would be able to wander off evil spirits from me in case I get cursed once again. But unlike Barbara, he's more of a con artist, which means that he most likely will swindle me from much more money than everybody else on this tier list. So I'll put him at a C tier because just in case Barbara wouldn't work out, I would still try to get his protection in a way. So that's that. Now Diluc is an underground mafia boss with a winery on his side, which means that I wouldn't be able to afford his favor, and no matter how much money I spend on him, he most likely wouldn't care for me much. But just because Diluc is pretty hot, I'll put him at a B tier because I will still try my best to get his favor, just so I don't get in trouble with the underground world of Genshin Impact. Now, Diona. Diona is a child who serves liquor to adults, which means that she has a lot of connections going on, that she could even persuade law to let her pretty much just skip all regulations and just straight up go into serving booze, which means that her favor would be quite important in case I would need to use alcohol as a persuasion method for some of the other characters. So for that reason, I would say I would be quite willing to spend a little bit of money and gain her favor. So I'll put her in a B tier. Now Eula. Eula is an ability, which means that like Ayaka, no matter how much money I would pay her, she would most likely not care for me. But at the same time, she was rejected by her own family, which means that she might require money at some point, and I would be there to provide it for her. Which means that she might give me some sort of financial support in the future if I show it to her right now, and might make me acquainted with an ability in Mondstadt, which is quite important, so I would put her about B tier. Probably about Diona, to be honest. Now, Yanfei. Yanfei is the only lawyer available in all of the Genshin Impact universe, which means that she would be able to protect me from the law in case I need somebody's alibi, if I do some shady business with like Dilek or something. So I would put her at a sell-soul tier because being the only lawyer, she has an immense amount of power and authority, and that's quite important. So I'll put her probably above Barbara. Yeah, that sounds right. Now, Fischl. Fischl is a princess of some god knows what country, but at the same time, she's a bit of a crazy person because the only partner that she has in life is a talking bird by the name of Oz. But I do like that bird, which means I would try to get in her good books, just because being acquainted with, once again, royalty of some country is an important asset in my opinions. But at the same time, just because she's crazy, it could be that she thinks I'm trying to buy something else from her, so she would be paranoid all the time, so she wouldn't allow me to gain her trust. So I'd put her probably in the middle of C tier, just because there would be a sense of danger every time I would be near her. So that's about right. Now, Ganyu is half god, also known as Adeptus, which means that she doesn't care about money, because she probably can blow up half of the leeway if she really wanted to. So most likely, no matter how much money I'll try to spend on her to gain her affection and favor, it wouldn't be enough because she doesn't understand the idealistic society that we live in. So it's probably would be a waste of time. So I'll push her above Bennett, just because she, unlike Bennett, she at least wouldn't bring me bad luck. So there's that. Now, Goro. Goro is a military general, which means he would be able to provide quite substantial military support in case there's an emergency. He would be able to provide backup, for which reason I think his favor would be quite important, and probably if I buy him some dog treats, he would be willing to shell out some of his soldiers to me for protection's sake. So I think I would put him at a sell-soul tier. Probably right around this bit, just because unlike Yanfei and Barbara, his favor wouldn't be as important, like immediately, in case I needed, but it would be important if I needed, so it's a sell-soul tier. Now, Hu Tao is a funeral parlor director, which means in case I need to get rid of a body of some hilichurls or something, I would go to her, which means I would probably spend quite a lot of money on her and gain her favor that way. So maybe she would provide me a massive discount at some point, and she works quickly, efficiently, and silently, which makes her a bit of a Black Ops unit type situation of the burial world. So that's important in my opinion. So she goes straight up into S tier, because in Genshin universe we get rid of quite a lot of people and monsters, so they need to go somewhere. So Hu Tao would help with that. Now, Arataki Ito, just like Diluc, is gang leader, which means he acquainted with a lot of shady individuals, and he would be able to get me acquainted in case I need some illegal smuggling to perform. So I would push him at about A tier, just because he is wanted by the law most of the time, so being acquainted with him too closely might lead to some repercussions from the law. So I probably would stick him at about top of the A tier, just for now. We'll see how it goes later. Now Kaya. Kaya is a forgotten prince of a destroyed country, which means he has a lot of grudges, and he's extremely sly and slippery, which means he would probably just swindle me of my money and wouldn't give me anything in return, judged by his character quest. He would just lead me on and on and on, and would never get anywhere. So I'll probably spend all my money on him and get nothing in return, and for that reason he goes straight up into F tier. Kazuha. Kazuha is an interesting case because he's a carefree person, which means he doesn't care about monetary possessions too much, but at the same time, if I probably treat him to a nice meal and a drink, he probably would remember the favor and would try to repay no matter what. So for that reason, I would probably stick him at about middle of the A tier, because having a favor with a samurai is pretty cool in my opinion, and he would most likely be quite loyal to me in a way if I show him affection and monetary support. Next will be Keqing, and Keqing in my opinion doesn't really possess too much of a high status, despite her being one of the retainers for Liyue's monarch, Ningguang, so which means she might be able to provide me with some higher connections if I spend money on her, but at the same time probably an extremely selfish person, which means that she wouldn't care about me as a person, no matter how much money and time I spend on her. So for that reason she goes straight into C tier, because connection is not everything in this world. Sometimes affection is quite important to build a friendship and trust. So for that reason she goes into C tier. Now Klee is a little bit of a arsonist, and she likes to explode a lot of things, which makes her quite dangerous to be acquainted with. But at the same time, if I would buy her some candy, she would most likely provide me with some of her illegal firearms, which might provide useful against finding some bosses. So for that reason I would put her probably at the top of a B tier. Now Kokami. Kokami is an extremely intelligent individual, which means that in case I would need some strategic advice, she would be able to provide it for me. And she kind of a future teller in a way. So my fortune would be pretty good with her around, because I wouldn't need to know in case I'm acquainted with a lot of these people for business connections in the future, how much I would need to spend on each one of them. She would most likely be able to provide it for me, the information. And also, she is quite caring individual, so most likely if I show reciprocation, she would be quite willing to help me out no matter what. So I would put her probably about Hu Tao, about in the self-soul tier. Now Lisa. Lisa is a librarian, which means that she knows quite a lot of ancient texts, which would help me to gain quite important knowledge in case I would need to wander off into like a labyrinth or something, and there would be a lot of traps. She would most likely be able to help me out with that and give me prior knowledge so I wouldn't die. So for that reason I would put her probably in the middle of a B tier. Now Mona. Mona is always broke, which makes it quite easy for me, because if I just pay her rent probably and food supply, she would most likely tell me all the fortune that I need to know. But at the same time she has a policy of not selling her fortune telling, which makes it quite hard. But having a fortune teller friend would be quite handy, because even though she wouldn't tell me directly my fortune, she might be able to hint at it by just following me around and telling me what to do and what not to do. And for that reason I probably would put her probably at the top of a self-soul tier, because she would require the least amount of expenses and she would probably provide the biggest dividends imaginable. So for that reason we're gonna stick with that. Now Ningguang is probably the wealthiest person in the entire Genshin Impact universe, which means that no matter how much money or time I spend on her, she wouldn't care for me one bit. So for that reason, I would put her at F tier, right above Ganyu probably, because she's her boss. So that should do it. Now Noelle. Noelle is an extremely loyal and caring individual that cares more about others than herself, which means that if I provide her with monetary support and spend a lot of time with her, she'll be very willing to help me out because she's pretty much a Superman of Genshin Universe. She can lift a bookshelf with just one hand, which is pretty cool. In case I need to move somewhere, she would be quite helpful with that. So I would put her probably at about middle of the road A tier, right about here. Now Jean. Jean is like a protective mother. She always ready to help. And I think if I just fund a little bit of Knights of Favonius, she would be quite willing to help me with law enforcement in case I need to. So for that reason, I'm gonna put her probably at the top of B tier, just because it's not an A tier, because unlike all the others above her, she doesn't have too much overpower because she is a substitute guild master. She's not an actual guild master, unlike Varka, who we're not really acquainted with yet. But just for perspective of future power and the fact that she would probably take care of me quite a lot, I would be quite willing to spend a bit of money on her, so I'll put her at a B tier. Now, Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi is a pharmacist worker, which means she would be able to provide me actual medicine in case Barbara fails to heal me with her holy water. So just for that reason alone, I think I would put her at about middle of an A tier, because conventional medicine is quite sufficient, and it would be quite important to have in hand in case Barbara runs out her water and would be unable to heal me. So for that reason, she goes into A tier. Now Razor. Razor is a special case because Razor doesn't have any money, and I don't think he cares about money. So I wouldn't be able to provide him with monetary support. But at the same time, he's acquainted with a deity in the name of Boris, the wolf. And he acquainted with a lot of animals, which means in case I get lost in a forest, he would be able to guide me out and help me out in case some animals attack me. So for that reason, I would put him at about B tier, because I probably can just buy him like a steak or something, and he would be willing to follow me around like a puppy would. So for that reason, he's there. Now, Rosaria is a vampire, which means she's probably immortal. And in order to gain her favor as an immortal individual, I would probably shell out quite a lot, and she most likely wouldn't care one bit about it. But just for the potential chance of gaining immortality in the future, because she might share her secrets, I would put her at about above Beta, just because she's pretty nonchalant about everything in life, but at the same time she might be just a tsundere, and she might show me a bit of compassionate and favor in the future if I just keep trying my best to please her. Now, Kuja Sarah. Sarah is a lieutenant and a military advisor for Radiant Shogun, just like Goro, which means that she would be able to provide me military support that Goro might not be able to. So just to have different options, I would put her below Goro as a soul tier, because she's not only military advisor and general, unlike Goro, but her support would be quite substantial in the future as well. Now Sayu. Sayu is a ninja, which means she specializes in stealth, and if I buy her probably like a new sleeping bag or something, she would be able to provide me with a lot of secret information that most likely I wouldn't be able to obtain otherwise, and for that reason she goes into A tier, above Kazuha, like middle of the road, because having secret intel on every single person, just like Ayata does, is quite important in case I would need to blackmail somebody to get what I want. Now Shenhe. Shenhe is another Adeptus, which means that she has godlike powers. But just like Ganyu, she probably wouldn't be able to care much about earthly possessions, which means I wouldn't be able to buy her favor. But at the same time, if I spend a lot of time with her, she might get warm to me and would be able to provide me with some cool support. And she's also an exorcist, just like her nephew Chongyun. So, but unlike Chongyun, she's more experienced and she's half god, so I probably would put her above Lisa. Now, Raiden Shogun is an actual god who is a leader of an entire continent, pretty much. So gaining her favor would be extremely important, but at the same time, she probably has more money than she could care about, and she literally locked herself up in her mind, which means that she only cares about non-ethereal possessions like knowledge. So I would probably be able to buy her favor with a bit of interesting stories and just showing her around like Mondstadt or something. So for that reason, I would try my best. So I'll put her as Cell tier, but most likely I would fail miserably. So for that reason, she goes at the bottom of Cell tier. Now, we have Sucrose. And Sucrose is just like Albedo is a scientist, which means that she would be able to provide me with a lot of cool gadgets in case I need some. And by supporting her financially in her research purposes, I would probably be able to gain her favor pretty quickly and easily. But unlike Albedo, she's not as talented and as knowledgeable in alchemy, so she probably would be able to provide me as cool stuff as Albedo can. But at the same time, in case Albedo rejects me, I could always turn to Sucrose, so I'll put her right next to him. Now, Child. Child is a mafia boss. He's acquainted with the criminal organization by the name of Futu, and he's one of these harbingers, which means that gaining his favor is extremely important to me in the future, just to avoid needless interactions with Futu. And for that reason, I'll put him as a Cell tier because Futu is quite annoying, and by having his support, I would most likely at least be able to avoid them a little bit better. But he's an extremely rich individual, so he would most likely not care about money, but if I provide him some intel about Aether, he probably would be willing to sell me some of his goons in a way. So I'll put him probably above Raiden, right here. Now, Toma. Toma is a playboy, which means that he knows probably every single woman in Inazuma, and having information from women is quite important because women are usually more knowledgeable about everything surrounding trends. So it would be quite useful to have Toma on my side, and if I would provide him with financial support, he was most likely show me around and made me acquainted with some interesting individuals. So for that reason, I would put him probably about middle of the A tier. Now, Venti. Venti is a god once again, but unlike Raiden, he doesn't really do much except drink and sing. But at the same time, entertainment is quite important, and his support will probably be quite easy to gain because all I need to do is just buy him a lot of liquor. So for that reason, I'll probably push him at about middle of a B tier, just because he also has a pet dragon, and it would be quite a useful taxi in case I need it. So here he goes there. Now, Zhangling is a chef, which means that she would be able to provide me with food, but unlike Aloy, she actually knows how to cook as well. Which means that it's probably about here, because to me food is quite important, and having good food no matter where you go is a positive. And if I just buy her ingredients, she would most likely sell me her favor, and I would gain her trust pretty easily. Now, Zhao. Zhao is a bit of an edgy individual, which means that he probably wouldn't care about anything besides pain and torment. So buying his favor would be exceptionally hard. and no matter how much money I would spend on him, he probably wouldn't care about me one bit. But I'll probably be able to slip into his good books by just buying him a year's worth supply of almond tofu. So that would be pretty easy to do. And he also is a demon conqueror, which means in case I've been chased by some demons, he would be able to help me out. And for that reason, he goes into S tier because demons are scary. Shincho. Shincho is an heir to a massive trading company, which means that he has a lot of financial support as is, so no matter how much money I spend on him, he wouldn't be willing to do me anything. But he also is a sucker for books, which means if I find some rare books for him, he might be able to help me out in the future in case I need to trade some products that I would acquire on my journeys and would gain some mora from it. So for that reason, I would put him probably above Kazuha at A tier. Xingyan is a music artist, which means that she would be able to provide entertainment in case I need to organize some sort of event in the future. And unlike Venti, she actually tries to constantly improve her singing by traveling around and doing concerts, which is quite cool sounding because she probably has a lot of cool stories to tell. And if I was to support her financially by paying for all her traveling expenses, she would probably be willing to provide me with entertainment in case I need it. But she's not a god, so I'll put her a little bit below Venti. Now, Yae Miko is a shrine maiden, which means that she would most likely be able to ward off any evil spirits, just like Chongyun. But unlike Chongyun, she actually has a lot of support from people of Inazuma, which means gaining her favor would be exceptionally important. And she's also exceptionally thirsty, which makes her quite easy to persuade to help with monetary possessions. So I'll be willing to shell out for her favor quite a bit, and I'll put her probably here at about A tier. Yoimiya would be probably at about S tier just because she has a lot of illegal firearms connections. So in case I need new weapons, she will probably be able to hook me up quite easily. But unlike everybody else, she based only in Inazuma, which means I would need to do quite a lot of traveling to get there and obtain those arms. That would be quite a harsh conditions, which means I might not be able to travel back to Mondstadt or Leeway on Sumeru. So it makes it quite difficult to gain her favor anywhere else except in Inazuma. But just to conquer Inazuma, I think her favor will be quite important, so I'll probably put her at about B tier, about Razor. Now, Eugene is an opera singer, which means that she is quite acquainted with a lot of influential people, probably older generation, a lot of businessmen. So gaining her favor would be quite important. But the problem is, she probably is quite wealthy individual, so I wouldn't be able to obtain her favor in any single way. Unlike if I maybe just appreciate her singing and say that her voice is quite mesmerizing, she would most likely be able to get into her good books, and she would be able to help me out to entertain all the crowd in case I ever need to. So for that reason, I'm putting her about Jinyan. Now, Zhongli. Zhongli at a certain point was able to print off money, which would have been the top of the Cell tier, but he lost his ability to print money. At the same time, he's an oldest god, which means that he's acquainted with pretty much everybody in existence, and he probably knows everything about everyone. And for that reason, he still goes at the top of Cell tier because his favor would be quite important, and he doesn't have any money anymore, which means that I will be able quite easily financially support him by providing him with basic necessities and a little bit of pocket money, which he probably would favor quite greatly. So for that reason, top of Cell tier. Now, Ayato, just like Ayaka, is an ability, which means no matter how much money I would throw at him, he would never give me a time of day. He's also quite a sly yet straightforward individual. So if I would provide him maybe with some military support from other characters, he would be able to see me from a good perspective. I would provide me with support in case I need some nobility connections that he obtains by being the representative of his Kamisato clan. So for that reason, put him probably at about top of a B tier. Now Kuki Shinobu, just like Sayu, is a ninja, but unlike Sayu, who has the support of Ayato and the entire nobility clan, she hangs out only with Ito, and most of the time what she does is helps Ito to get out of trouble, which means she's quite a busy individual. So gaining her favor would be not easy, because she always looks for negatives first rather than positives. But at the same time, maybe if I try to help her to free Ito and like pay off all his debts and whatnot, she might help me out as well by gathering intel that Sai wouldn't be able to provide. So for that reason, I would probably put her right below Sai. Now Yellen. Yellen is an interrogator, and she's also a detective, which means she probably would be able to sniff out any information in case I ever need to find someone or something. But at the same time, she's an extremely dominating and powerful individual, which means that she probably wouldn't be as willing to sell her favor to me. So I would need to spend a lot of time and effort in order to gain her affection, which is fine by me because she's an extremely dominated person, which means in case I need to interrogate somebody, she would be the woman to go to. And for that reason, I would probably put her at about top probably of the A tier. Yeah, that sounds about right. Heizo is a part of Tenryu Commission, which makes him a very useful individual to be in favor with, money-wise. And he probably would accept my money just because he most likely just follows his own convictions and doesn't really follow the government as much, which means just by showing my goodwill, I would be able to probably gain some intel on the Inazuman government, and that's quite important in case I would ever need to get into good books with some government officials. So for that reason, he goes straight into middle of the B tier. Now, Collie. She is a forest ranger, which means just like Amber, who helped her previously to turn her life around, she would be willing to help me out in case I'm ever in danger in Sumeru, which is quite important because Sumeru is an exceptionally dangerous place, and being quite new there, I think it would be important to get somebody's help to show me around what to eat, what not to eat, and who to mess with and who not. So for that reason, I think I would be quite willing to spend money on her. And as a forest ranger, she probably doesn't earn a lot, so she will probably be quite willing to accept my money. So I would put her at about top of the B tier. Dori would be quite an important character to get in favor with financially because she's a merchant, which means she would be able to obtain me anything that I could ever wish for if I have enough money. And for that reason, she goes about middle of the beat of the sell-soul tier, because having a merchant as one of your friends is an exceptionally important trait because they can get you anything. And she's also known for having quite a materialistic personality, so she would be quite easy to get along with just by throwing money her way. Now Aether. Aether, as being isekai into this world, he doesn't have a lot of money, which means that if I just show him a little bit of support financially, he would be willing to share his protagonist powers with me, and that's important. And for that reason, he goes into top of the sell-soul tier because protagonists always win with the power of friendship and probably his dual sword. So there's that. Now Lumine goes at about B tier just because unlike Aether, I would most likely not be able to gain as much favor with her because she's less cool than Aether, so I just wouldn't know what to do with her, even if I throw money her way, so I would probably just stick with her brother, and that should do it. Just because Aether has like a harem of every single woman available in Genshin universe, and that's quite an important power to have. So for that reason, we're gonna move on. Now Tanari. He is somebody who is very intelligent as he is a scholar, and he probably knows everything there is to know about ecology of Sumeru, unlike Akali, which means that his support will be exponentially important in exploring Sumeru, and for that reason he goes into Cell Soul like bottom tier, just because I don't want to die in Sumeru, so we're gonna try our best to put as much money his way, as much as he needs or wants, in order to survive Sumeru encounters to our best ability. Now, that should do it for now, as every other character is not available at the moment, which means they are subjected to change. And based on this tier list, I'd say I would most likely just would stick with Aether just because of his protagonist-like powers, and he also has power of friendship, which means that he befriends every single character on this tier list. So just throwing all my money at him would probably benefit me much greater than anything else. So that's my conclusion. Make sure to let me know who you would be most likely to spend all your hard-earned money on to gain either their favor, affection, or love. And I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.